Gentlemen, boys, and girls, seatbelts on tight. This ride is taking you straight up right now. I wish the market was like that all the time. It's Money Info, brought to you by Princeton Research, with Mike King in Las Vegas and Charles Moskowitz in Boston. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How are you?
Hey, doing very well, as is the market so far today, huh?
It's not doing so great. I mean, it's up.
Yeah, it's up.
But it's not up much.
No.
And, you know, all of these
Excuse
guys
me.
are...
Yeah.
All of these guys are just talking the Fed and Bernanke, and he's not going to be there.
Oh, yeah. They're blasting the daylights out of the guy.
They're just talking this to death. And frankly, it doesn't mean a thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, quite possibly. Is that...
Well, I mean, Janet Yellen is a little more dovish than Bernanke is. So,
hey guys,
clearly that's not going to matter.
Yeah, and Casey joining us from Tampa Bay.
Hello.
Yeah, the home of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Don't they have a doubleheader here today?
Oh, you mean the Tampa Bay Rays?
Yeah.
They might. Yeah, they might, as a matter of fact.
I think that they have a 1 o'clock and a 7 o'clock game, a doubleheader here.
There you
afternoon.
go. Day-night doubleheader.
Look, our pitchers are going to wear hockey helmets now.
Yeah.
Oh, man. You know...
No, that's only against the Dodgers.
No, but you know, did that kid get out of the hospital yet? The pitcher for Tampa?
Yeah, you know, they reported that he just suffered a minor concussion.
Oh.
I don't know how physiologically that's possible, but yeah, minor concussion.
Yeah, I got hit before like that in pitching college ball, and believe me, I was seeing double.
Does anybody remember Herb Score?
Oh yeah. Well, and
he played for the Reading Single A ball club when it was part of Cleveland, and he was very promising.
Oh yeah.
That ruined his career.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, and believe me, being hit in the head, of course, it didn't do any damage to me. Just, you know, anybody who knows me. But you know, seriously, it scares the hell out of you because you can't get out of the way. You know, when you've got something. And
not at 90 miles an hour.
Exactly. When you're only 50 feet away and that thing's coming 90 miles an hour, it's not fun. And
there's really no place for that in any sport.
Well, and you know, it was very interesting hearing the guys on ESPN talking about safety. And, you know, they were talking about, and I didn't remember all this stuff about the helmets, that, you know, that was phased in over 15 years. Did you remember that? I didn't at all. I mean, it started in Little League and then, you know, moved up the ranks to high school and then college, and then the pros finally adopted it. Well, they're now talking about putting helmets on pitchers now. And they got to do something. I mean, this is the second year in a row something like this has happened. And these guys are only bigger and stronger and throwing faster, which means the hitters will send it back faster, and it's not good. I mean, they're going to have to be very, very careful. It's tough, you know, and Casey being the father of an athlete, I don't care what the sport is now. It's like all these kids are bigger and stronger now, and it's changing the whole athletic scheme, to say the least. Speaking of changes, how about the housing market, guys? The home builder confidence now is good. It's over 50. So, you know, needless to say, we have not seen that, especially in Florida and where Mike is in Las Vegas, in about 5 years. So that was really good news.
And the numbers this morning were just, you know, pretty much in line. One was a little disappointment. One was a little bit, you know, better than expected. And now they're talking about, you know, the number of markets where there's a shortage of buildable space.
And
you know, that's always been the argument for real estate. They ain't making land anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, Mike, what's it like in Vegas now?
Well, there's all the promises and the speculation that housing is ready to boom, and yet if you look at the major manufacturers or major miners of iron ore or basic materials like Vale, BHP, PKX, Rio, X, U.S. Steel, Cliff, CLF, they're at the lowest levels there. They look like they're just sinking off into abyss. So it's hard to understand how we can be about to have a housing boom with all of these companies sinking off to nothing.
With no materials. Yeah. How does that happen? I mean, how can it happen? Unless people are buying offshore and it's cheaper. I mean, I don't know.
Well, this is worldwide. We're talking about worldwide basic iron ore steel production.
Part of it, it's interesting the way that markets react to things. If you really think about it, relative to things like copper and iron ore, the Chinese bought and bought and bought and bought. And then the banks were allowing them to leverage all of their copper inventories. And, of course, the market has not come back from that. Much the same way, if you recall, in the Enron mess and all the problems with rates that were being manipulated, really, the natural gas market has never come back from that. I mean, do you remember what the natural gas market was at the height of the Enron stuff?
No.
Which was all fake. My recollection is natural gas was about 3 times what it is now, 4 times what it is now.
That's $13
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And, markets get, people rely on markets until, they always stay too long. And then these markets have to, really work off the problem. I mean, it's much like, it doesn't happen anymore. But you remember how if a stock split 15 years ago, it took 6 months to work off the excess of stock?
Oh, sure.
I mean, it just doesn't happen now. A lot of people look at stock splits, which are really nothing but arithmetic, and, the stocks move higher. That never used to happen with splits. So, there's a certain amount of psychology involved in all of these markets. And when the perception changes, and frankly, it happens overnight, the one thing that I would say about the Vale and Steel and BHP, if you notice the way that they're trading now, they have really extreme, almost like short covering rallies to the upside, which then collapse again. So you're getting an increase in volatility, much like we had an increase in volatility. I think we said it in the letter either this week or last week. You get the increase in volatility at the turns, at the transition points. And then these markets, especially the markets that we're talking about here, raw materials, they trend for years, like the interest rates. Are interest rates going back to 1.8? Maybe they test 1.8, but they're not going to stay there. I mean, the bottom is in. And so, the same thing can happen overnight with some of these materials. And you see it in the volatility.
All right, so you say interest rates going up to 1.8. Will they go higher?
You mean down to 1.8?
Or down to 1.8. But do you see interest rates eventually going higher with inflation?
I look at interest. I think that the only realistic way to look at interest rates is in a 5 or 6 or 8 year period. And I think the bottom's in. Is it going straight to 4%? I doubt it. Mm-hmm. But is it going to 1.6? I strongly doubt that. I mean, we'd have to have a real mess relative to the economy and the home builders and the banks and everything else. That's another thing. As the interest rate curve steepens, the financials really perform. And, as we definitely mentioned in the letter this week, Bank of America is up from, 4 to 13.
Mm-hmm.
It's also still down from 50. And when you look at some of these other stocks like Citi looks great where it is.
Yeah.
Except that they reversed it 1 for 10. So it's still really a $4 stock, down from 30. So, the perception is not necessarily, all there is. And a lot of these things really long-term trend. I mean, Mike can tell you, the commodities tend to trend. The Dick Donchin 5 and 20-day moving average system, which was the first, really, years and years and years ago, was a trend-following system. That was the way to make money in raw goods, following the trend. So, it may get very choppy down here, but interest rates have probably bottomed, and probably we're in a bottoming process for some of these others now.
I got to run early today. I just popped in to say, hey, we're going to be shooting a commercial next week, so I won't be around next week either. So we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Hey, okay, Casey. Good luck.
Can we come and watch the commercial?
Yeah, there you go.
If you saw the model we have lined up for this, I'm going to sell tickets to this.
Wow!
I should put this commercial on pay-per-view.
Pay-per-view.
Yeah, just make sure that you forward. Just make sure that you forward the file to us so we can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, we will.
Yeah, I'll take the raw tape. Thank you very much. Oh.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay, have a good one, Casey. Casey Quintana over across the state in Tampa Bay with Tsunami Strikes and his other nutritional products. So, they're doing their first television commercial. It's going to be on ESPN. And they're doing something that is sort of a trend, not in talk radio, because commercials are part of the format, but it's happening in other parts of the business where you're all of a sudden seeing quick-hitting 15-second spots. So that's they're going to be doing for Tsunami Strikes. So kind of intriguing, to see where Casey is taking his company.
It's interesting, Greg, that you say that, because a lot of the spots, if you really watch them over and over and over again, as anybody who sits in front of the TV as much as I do sees, they start off with a 1 minute, and they show that 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then they cut it down to a 30-second.
Mm-hmm.
And you still remember it because they were playing the whole thing before.
Right.
And then, they bring it back down to a 15-second.
Yeah.
I mean, they take the same work that they've already done and cut it 3 times.
Yeah, and you've got, especially car dealers will do short commercials at either end of the break. So you got them at the beginning, you got them at the end. So kind of intriguing. We all talk about energy. Did you guys happen to notice on Bloomberg yesterday? Apparently, Eastern Colombia has gotten a huge oil strike, and Venezuela is going crazy, trying to find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of workers, truck drivers, you name it, and they have totally filled 40 hotels in this area.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're just building as quickly as they can to start building oil fields there. It's going to be amazing, and they say it's going to be a huge boom to that area of the world.
The only problem with Venezuela, and it's not a terrible problem, but the only problem is that while Chavez was in power there, they really didn't do much to maintain their energy infrastructure. So that's going to all have to be built out too.
Yeah. It's interesting. The new president of Venezuela is easing restriction on foreign investors, which I think is quite interesting. Of course, and everybody seems at one time or another has been nabbed on this, with the various trends, whether it was Mexico or you name the country in South America that goes nationalistic on a corporation.
I was going to say, at least
takes them
planning ahead of time.
Oh yeah, yeah, right. Oh man, no kidding. So
I mean, how Oxy had a problem in Venezuela.
You bet.
They all did.
Oh yeah. Well, didn't Shell had a huge mess down there? I mean, yeah. I'm sure. And this
Shell isn't even an American company.
Right, Dutch Shell. You got it. Yeah.
Royal Dutch.
Yep.
Right.
This is right up Mike King's alley. This is his part of the world in Malaysia. Tony Fernandez. I love this story. This guy is a gazillionaire. I guess he's got two. Well, he claims to have two homes. One's in London. He bought a soccer team there. He's got a Formula One racing team, but he is also the founder of Asia's Air Asia, Kuala Lumpur based, and he's moved his office now to Indonesia, so he can avoid the gridlock of London and just pay attention to that part of the world, because he says that's the new boom area. And of course Michael King has been saying that, along with Australia and India, for a long time. Isn't that right, Michael?
Yeah, there's no question that this century belongs to Asia. They have the growth, they have the need for infrastructure and building, but they seem so dependent on America for everything. It seems like when our markets decline, they collapse. When we have a small problem, they have a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have a strong banking system, Mike? Because I remember one of the biggest complaints in doing business in China was that they didn't really have a strong banking system, and for a while you couldn't get a negotiable letter of credit in China because none of their banks were trusted enough to have them be accepted.
I know that's a big problem all over the rest of the world. Besides United Kingdom and America, it's tough out there.
So there is like no central bank, I
and the
guess,
world,
as we would know it?
The world is fighting deflation right now. I mean, the Fed is doing everything possible to try to encourage a little inflation, a whiff of inflation.
Yeah.
Inflation had always been the problem. Now it's deflation. And
well, you can see it in the gold.
Example. I mean, gold is just very weak.
Mm-hmm.
An example of deflation.
Or at least the expectation of deflation.
Yes, exactly, the expectation.
But, you look on the other side, and you see oil back up around 100. Brent is around, 105, 106?
98.06 for Western, and
yep.
105.87 for Brent.
Yeah. So, the oil folks have got to be smiling right now, to say the least.
Yeah, but they really did not perform in the last week or so. They've been down. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing that part of that has to do with the crack spread and the fact that the market for heating oil is disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're the only part of the country up here in the Northeast that even uses heating oil, and the number was down like 15%, and 13% of that, they said, is never coming back, because those were conversions to natural gas.
I was going to say, when
keep in mind that part of heating oils for airline fuel.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Part of that is jet fuel? Really?
Right. Yes.
A component of.
Oh.
That's right. Yeah. Yes.
Huh. Okay. Well, that's even better. I mean, the more and more houses go to natural gas, the better it's going to be for our jet fleet as well. I mean, it's more fuel for them. That would be good news. And up in your area of the country, Charles, seeing that you're the pharmaceutical, seems like, capital of the world, Johnson & Johnson decided to pay $1 billion, and we're talking B here, $1 billion for Aragon Pharmaceuticals.
Yep.
And it's a closely held company. with an experimental prostate cancer drug. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Well, again, it's the smaller pharmaceutical companies
Yep.
that get bought by the big guys in order to help them build a pipeline of new drugs. We've been discussing that for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's one. I mean, if you watch CNBC, there are 3 of them a week, every week.
Interesting. Yeah, this is the one that
just
really
unbelievable.
This is the one that really caught my eye. I thought, oh, okay, this is intriguing. You know, and of course we're obviously since this is Men's Health Month, it's we're all thinking about stuff like that. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, there are problems with some of these things. If you recall, Provenge, which was Dendrion's drug for prostate cancer, that stock was trading, if I recall correctly, around $3 when they announced their drug, and 3 weeks later it was $30, and 6 months after that it was $60, and I guess the drug has not lived up to its, press, because it currently trades around $4, and that is not a split stock. So it's made the entire round trip. But on the other hand, it stayed independent as opposed to being willing to be taken over. There were several who were interested in it, and they just never did a deal. I mean, since the beginning of this year in February, the stock was, $7.50 or $8, and it's cut in half again.
Wow. Yeah, it's that whole medical industry is just changing so dramatically, and as our the record keeping and all the other stuff, and I guess we're going to have a guest.
Right, and we have
very
somebody
soon.
coming on
Yeah.
about that shortly. And I also wanted to bring something up. We have this options-only account, which is a highly speculative account, and it's really the reason that we have the texting service. And what I'm considering doing, and I'll mention it in this week's letter, all of these platforms, TD Ameritrade has Thinkorswim, and everybody has something like this. But they also have these guys who are on and available every day for a couple of hours in the morning and a couple of hours in the afternoon. And while I don't have the time or the energy to do that, I'm thinking that I'm going to use my conference call number on Wednesday mornings starting in 2 weeks, and everybody will be able to call in, and we can have a midweek discussion, because the options are just not a week-to-week transaction. Is that Fred?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Fred Zolla, introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Fred Zolla, CEO of iMedicor.
Well, welcome.
iMedicor is the company that we were talking about, who is at that intersection of record keeping and making them available. So why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown on the company, Fred?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Charlie, and giving me this opportunity. I appreciate that. Our company's been around for about 11 years. Our initial business model was actually delivering continuing medical education programs to physicians and at their place of work, or through a desktop video conferencing system that was proprietary. And we realized a couple of years into our business that we could do a lot more with the communications issues that are faced by physicians and the entire healthcare community. And so what we did is we started looking at what some of the issues were, and the fact is that physicians, even to today, and most people in healthcare that deal with patient-specific discrete records, cannot use the Internet the way you and I would use the Internet in our normal lives or businesses or personal lives. So we set out to fix that problem. And right around that time, which was around 2006, late 2006, the Bush administration came up with their regulation for moving the entire healthcare community from a paper-based system to a digital or electronic health record system. And so what happened was we looked at those regulations and we realized that there was a missing part, and that was once you convert from paper to digital, now what? How do you move a record and still stay HIPAA compliant, which is, the regulations that govern the privacy and protection of your own personal health records? How do you stay HIPAA compliant and move an electronic medical record? There was no provision for that in the original regulations. Now the big buzz in Washington is the word interoperability, and that is that these electronic health record systems that are proliferating throughout the entire marketplace, and there's about 2,000 right now, from what I understand, that are certified and qualified for federal incentive funds. Right now, none of them really have the ability to communicate with each other. It's something that the entire industry has resisted. It's something that's required starting 2014 in order to continue getting your incentive funds. It's going to be required by the electronic health record systems community in order to get recertified next year, of which all of them have to be recertified again. And and basically what iMedicor has done is we've solved that problem. We have created a system that allows, it's a communication system, it allows for the secure transmission and transport of electronic health records, discrete data, patient by patient, from any electronic health record system to be delivered into any other electronic health system. And right now, nobody except us has that ability to do it.
Fred, how many of these 2,000 other companies are going to be able to shake out after 2014? I mean, how can you have that many operations and not be able to communicate? I mean, that's beyond my... I just can't even believe something like that.
It's staggering, isn't it? It's just absolutely staggering.
Yeah, it is.
I had the ability a couple of years back, as all of this was beginning to come to a head, to have a private dinner meeting with a couple of the influential senators that helped create this these regulations. And one thing I said to both of them was, Senator, when you guys made up this regulation, what was the idea, or what was the thought behind, how you would move a record from one system to another? And they both looked at each other and basically said, we don't even know what you're talking about here. And I said, well, the idea of how do these systems become interoperable with each other? Because if they're not, what good is moving from paper to electronic? Because that means to move a record, I have to first go from paper to electronic, and now if I need to move that record to like a referral or a hospital or receive a referral, what do? Do I go back to paper? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. So no one was thinking about creating a network. And for us, our network, you could think of us like the AT&T network of the past, okay? AT&T strung all the lines, and at one point you had to buy an AT&T or a Bell phone, and that was the only way to communicate. Then, deregulation came. The network was still there, but you could come into that network any way you wanted to. Like I'm talking to you right now on a Panasonic phone. You could be talking to me on a Magnavox or a Polycom or who knows, any one of 1,000 different phones. Well, our network is exactly the same thing. We don't care how you come in or what system you're using to come in. We can take that information and transport it over our network in a secure environment that either meets or surpasses the national standards for protecting patient data.
So you're the network backbone then?
That's right. That's exactly what we are.
Wow. That's great.
This has really come a long way, because I remember that the first thing that they talked about doing, and the statistics were certainly there to bear it out, was putting all of your information on one of those mini CDs. And I think that the focus of that was very specifically a motorcycle enthusiast who said that 80% of the deaths on motorcycles were because of incomplete or incorrect treatment. And, you were to carry this little, remember those little mini discs? They were like the size of a silver dollar, but your reader could still read them.
Sure.
You had to have one of those in your wallet with all of your information on it. So in case you were, picked up off the ground, you had your medical record with you. This is obviously a dramatic step past that.
Well, what this really does is it makes this whole move to electronic health records, relevant to the day-to-day clinical workflow, because you could actually use those records, not just internally, but you can move them to where they need to be, whenever they need to be. And so this network of ours, has the ability to take a record from any system, move it into another, and open it in a readable format. Of course, now there's all national standards on how data is collected, and it's called the CCD or CCR, and we can move that data. So we're actually moving live, discrete data within a secure HIPAA environment, a HIPAA's compliant environment. And, to answer one of the earlier questions about, how this is going to shake out, we think what's going to happen is as we approach January 1st, 2014, we're going to see a lot of consolidation in the marketplace. I think these 2,000, potential electronic health record systems are going to come down to a much more smaller number as the big guys begin to gobble up the little guys. And some of the little guys will just go away because it's going to be very expensive for them to be recertified again. And they're going to need components and technology that basically they're going to have a hard time developing. Now, what we've done on our side, to give you an example, I've spent a lot of time the last couple of months down in Washington basically educating staff, people, and our elected officials who deal with these issues of healthcare and security and HIPAA compliance and what have you, educating them the fact that this technology really does exist. There was a document that was created a while back, actually about 12 weeks ago, called Reboot. And this was the Republican answer or Republican request to HHS, Health and Human Services, to basically cease and desist the incentive funds because the technology required for interoperability starting January 1st did not exist. Now, what their plan was, and that's why they called this document Reboot, is they wanted to reboot the program, taking into consideration what it's going to take to develop this interoperable, communication network that will move electronic health records. Well, in my travels in Washington, I've been showing the officials that you don't need to reboot the system. Actually, we have solved that problem. The only problem that we see is that you guys in Washington didn't know about it. So we've done demonstrations. We've been to the White House. We've been to the Senate. We've been to the House, and we're being invited back again next week. And I was handed by one of the healthcare committees in the Senate their reboot document, and they asked me to respond to it, which we did. And basically, we went paragraph by paragraph almost and explained why this technology does in fact exist, how it works, how it would benefit the entire healthcare community. And from what I understand, it's the reason I'm being called back next week, we're getting a lot of traction, a lot of attention on both sides of the aisle, both the Democrats and the Republican side of the aisle. And it looks like this might be something where they actually do cooperate with each other for the good of the healthcare community and the furthering of this whole meaningful use regulations that are out there.
So we want to
So
remind...
it's not a partisan issue.
Wow.
I don't see it as a partisan issue right now. I think it started off maybe as a partisan issue, but I think that, having dealt with a lot of the staff people and some of the elected officials, I truly believe, and maybe I hope I'm not sounding too naive here, I truly believe that we're just looking for a solution here that will make this whole health care. Now remember, this is not Obamacare. This is something else. This was funded under the ARP funding, and this is really to move the entire healthcare community to electronic health records which ultimately is going to reduce, or theoretically will reduce, the cost of health care throughout the whole country. You don't have to have tests that are unnecessary, duplication of tests. For Medicaid and Medicare, you can detect fraud better, you can process claims faster, it'll be more efficient. I mean, all those things that end up costing insurance companies and Medicaid and Medicare services more fees than they need to pay, or more claims than they need to pay, all of that can come to fruition if the electronic health record system really does work. And the last component to that is not just the transition, which is well underway, and over 60% of the market has already transitioned to electronic records, but the last component is, once you transition, how do you use those records in an effective way? And that means secure communications, and that's where we play.
That's great. Hey, Fred, how have you gotten any reaction from, say, the large hospital groups in the United States like Tenet or HCA or any of the other biggies?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we've gotten a couple of consultants that work with us right now that have that work in the big, larger hospital areas. We've got them in Pennsylvania and Texas and Florida, California, and we're looking at just starting some pilots right now to show some of the proof of concept. We're at that point right now on the graft where the need of the market has now intersected with our technical ability to address that need. And so we've got some very good strategic partners. We've got 2 statewide deals in the Northeast that we're ready to close that will use our technology as their underlying health information exchange technology. So at this point, what we see happening is the big hospital groups, they all have the same problem. That problem is that somewhere between 30 and 40% of their referral network is not inside their communications network. Therefore, they need something that allows those records to be transported outside of their own ecosystem into a different one. And so we're working on that now. One of my people in Washington who is very close with HCA has indicated that the senior people at HCA are ready to sit down and talk and see a demonstration. So we see nothing but momentum picking up behind us right now.
Do you have any idea? You mentioned Northeast states. We don't need to elaborate as to which ones they might be, but do you have a time frame as to when they may adopt your system?
Yes, I do actually.
Or can you talk about it?
I can't. It's final negotiation.
I'm sorry. I'm
sorry.
Yeah, that's I.
We're looking at the end of the third quarter or beginning of the fourth quarter to get the system up and running. So we're looking at probably either somewhere between September and the middle of October to get a number of major hospital projects up and running.
Well, that's great. That's amazing.
And let me just elaborate just 1 second. We have decided, a strategic decision here that we could do a couple things. We can hire 10,000 salespeople and go out there and start knocking on doors. And unfortunately, you look at history, and that didn't quite work out too good for the pharmaceutical industry. It cost a lot of money, and the results were questionable. So what we decided to do was to partner up with organizations that already had a relationship with the providers, the medical providers themselves. So groups like independent physician associations, IPAs, MCOs, managed care organizations like Galaxy Network. On the dental community, MCOs like Carrington Health or Carrington International. We're working now with a group down in Texas, Ranger Network. And Ranger is the IT infrastructure company that helps build out IT infrastructures in most of the major hospitals throughout the country. We have, so we have those type of strategic partnerships that already have, they already are the trusted source going into their clients, and they're bringing us in and basically saying, we have an answer to one of your big problems, which is secure communications. So we're finding the path of least resistance here without having to expand, our burn rate, and at the same time become far more effective than we ever could be if we tried to do this on our own.
I remember, 20, 25 years ago, when my wife and I were both working in TV news in L.A., and, the dream of the UCLA med school and hospital there was to have medical records that, they could instantly send to Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, and it sounds like you're the vehicle. I mean, this could conceivably happen.
Yeah, I think, somebody's got to do it. And right now, I'll tell you, the big guys, I've always asked this question, too. Why aren't the big guys like the GEs and the McKessons and the Allscripts and the Epics and so forth, why are they not paying attention here? Well, I can tell you just from my own observations that right now there's a tremendous competitive land grab going on, where a lot of these big systems are just trying to get as many clients as they can into their own system as phase one. Now, soon they're going to wake up, and it's going to happen fairly quick, and they're going to realize that the smokescreen that they're sending out there that they could be interoperable within their own networks is not going to hold weight, because they have to be interoperable amongst themselves. And none of them want to give anybody an advantage by releasing information or they just don't want to give their competitors an advantage, because there is such a big competitive nature going on out there in this big land grab to get clients. Well, from our point of view, you see, we're kind of an agnostic network. We can lay over the top of all of that noise, and you take a GE or a McKesson or any of the big guys that are out there, by simply licensing our technology, they become interactive overnight. So they either have to develop the system we did, and it cost us about $27 million to build this system. Of course, to the big guys, that's pocket change. That's a rounding error on their balance sheet. But for us, it was a lot of money and a lot of work, but now we're there. And so what they could do now is they could just license, and we'll white label it so it'll even look like their technology, and they don't have to worry about development, support, trial and error, still trying to cooperate with their competitors. They don't have to worry about any of that. We just become the agnostic layer of communication that lays over the top of the entire system.
So you can basically private label a bunch of these.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. In our hospital division right now, through the Ranger Network, they're private labeling it. It says powered by iMedicor, but it's basically our technology that they're bringing into their clients.
Wow, that's great.
And how does this really affect the growth of the company? I mean, right now the stock is basically literally a penny stock. With a market cap of about $7 million?
Yeah, a little over $7 million today.
Okay.
Well, we're at a low point right now because revenue is just beginning to kick in. Matter of fact, I could tell you that without giving you numbers, by the time we finish this quarter, we'll have done better than this quarter than probably in the last 2 years together. Because things are really beginning to heat up for us right now. We're really starting to see traction. We're getting more and more subscribers all the time at this point. Those subscribers are going through a short free period where they get to try the system out, and then we're seeing them beginning to convert into real revenue and subscriptions. We see on our consulting side of the business, where we help various medical and dental practices actually move through the system and become compliant to the regulations. I mean, all of a sudden we see that blossoming right now. So there's a lot going on, and I think that later this month we're going to put out an earnings report that'll show that growth, and we think that between that and some of the strategic deals that we've put together, the statewide deals, we've got some management changes that are coming in to help us prepare for the growth. All of that is is addressing the fundamentals that move the market.
What is your year? Is it a calendar year?
No, we're July 1st through June 30th. So we're approaching the
So
end of our,
you're coming to this is the last quarter.
That's right, exactly.
Okay.
So I think we're positioned properly. I think that the market will respond to the basic fundamentals, and those fundamentals are about to become public knowledge very quickly.
What is hard for me to imagine with all this debate over Obamacare, which has been going on for 5 years, something like that, that it seems like everything is coming down to the last quarter of this year. It's amazing, and no one still knows all the ramifications of the whole plan.
That is typical political and government. They don't do it until they absolutely have to. I mean, we're still waiting for Dodd-Frank to be written.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
And that was
that's
passed
right.
4 years ago.
Right.
That's right.
Well, and what got me was when Fred was talking about meeting with the two legislators, and they looked at him like he had three heads. And it's like, wait a minute, what they're writing is like, this is going to be the law, and you just think,
one of the biggest problems, Greg, and I see it all the time. You hear these guys talk about financials, you hear them talk about energy, you hear them talk about health care. These are not specialists in anything. Until they get educated in any specific area, whether it's their staffs or, Jamie Dimon in front of the Senate, or until they really get educated on stuff, they don't have a clue about this stuff. I mean, not an educated clue about it. And I think that that's one of the main things that, I'm hearing here that I like. Fred's been to Washington and he's going back. And so, maybe they can, this time, make an actual informed, educated.
Our consultant in Washington said to me when we first started planning our visits to Washington, he said to me, so when you come here, what are you going to ask for? And I looked at him and I said, I'm not asking for anything. And he said, what are you talking about? Everybody who comes to Washington asks. Always an ask.
Yes.
I said, no, I'm going to do a give. I'm going to give them information so they don't look foolish, number one, running around saying that this technology doesn't exist when, in fact, it does. I said, but I think this is going to help, the American people. It's going to help the entire healthcare industry. It's going to reduce the cost, that eventually will catch up to all of us as well. I said, so, I'm not asking anything. I'm going to be going down there to inform and teach and educate. And you have to see when you walk into a senator's office, there's a level of tension whenever guys like me come in because they're always asking for something. They always have their hand. And our representative in Washington, the first thing he says is, let me put your fear aside. There is no ask today. We're going to come in just to give you information. And you can almost see their shoulders go down in a sigh of relief, and then all of a sudden they're very receptive to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, all we're going to ask for is that you actually listen and maybe take some notes. I mean, and I don't mean to sound like I'm being really harsh. You can't expect these guys who have, possibly a good educational background and somewhat of a broad group of interests, you can't expect them to be experts on financials or experts on Medicare or they have a tough job. I have to say that. Most of the time, I really don't like them and I don't trust them. But the fact is, people look at them as authority figures, which clearly they're not. And I think, having the attitude of, we're going to show you, we're going to explain this to you, and then you do what you want to do with it.
Fred,
but we fill the bill.
Fred,
That's
when
right.
are you going down there?
I'll be back down again next week, I think Tuesday and Wednesday. We're just waiting for some coordination on a couple of meetings right now. So we're trying to get in front of the White House Chief Technology Officer, who's made an indication that they're very interested in talking with us, but we're just trying to work everything around their schedule right now.
That's great.
Just out of curiosity, Fred, is there not a way for people through maybe social media to, quote, opt into a program as opposed to addressing it from the medical side?
Well, you see, our service is called the iMedicor Social HIE, Health Information Exchange. Now, we built our system just like a social network. Now, our network is not like some of the others out there that you would log on and say, hi, how's the wife and kids? I mean, that's not what we do. But if you, I'll describe this to you real quick. The doctor comes in and creates an account, and we authenticate that doctor based on his medical license number, his NPI number, which is his insurance number, and a set of criteria that clearly that is established, and the doctor has their profile into our system. Then they get to create a practice, and in that practice, it's basically sub-accounts off of the primary account where, the office manager, the administrator, the bookkeeper, the scheduler, any of the other administrative help, they all get their accounts because ultimately they're the ones that are going to be using the system far more than the doctor would, because they're the ones that move the medical records, the ones that accept them, and so forth.
Well, like any business, it's the support staff.
The support staff. Then once you do that, you create your community. And that's like friending somebody on Facebook or inviting somebody in on LinkedIn. So you go to your various people that you would either send or receive referrals from, and you invite them into your community. Once you invite them into your community, they also get an iMedicor authenticated account with us. And they get to use it for a period of time, 60 days for free, and then they have to make a decision whether they'll pay the $35 a month fee for unlimited use of the entire system. And for $35 a month, I mean, you can't get a cell phone for that much, let alone affect your entire medical records operation in a robust medical practice. So that's how we kind of work as a social media. Within the social media, we have not only the ability to move records, we have a very large, high-quality catalog of continuing medical education programs. We have a large catalog of staff development educational programs. We got the ability for doctors to work in work groups and blogs and participate in instant messaging and discussion groups. So we've put together a lot of tools that doctors and their staff will need, not just to move an electronic record, but to make this a robust area where secure communication to deliver better health care through secure communication.
Well, it really sounds like a step in the right direction. We're just about out of time.
That's
Maybe
all right.
you can
Let's
come back again after you've been to Washington and tell us about the reception and who you get to see. And
good idea, Charles. Yeah, and we're going to kill CBS News, needless to say. We got another 4 minutes to go.
Oh, okay.
This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie, Florida. Fred, I seriously, come on back. When you get back from D.C., this sounds like an amazing. This is just you are the backbone of what I think everybody has been looking for. I know locally here we have a little community hospital group in the neighboring county in Martin County, Martin Memorial Hospital System. Well, they've got 3 hospitals, 2 now, and they're adding a third in January of 2014. Well, they own a lot of doctor practices, but a lot of the doctor practices they don't own. So, it's I see this as being kind of a perfect solution for not only big companies but little urban rural hospitals as well.
That's exactly right. So I'm glad you've been paying attention because you got it right on the nail head there.
Wow, man, you're on to something. This is amazing. Charles, on the stock side, what does it look like?
Well, it's sitting pretty close to really basically all-time lows. And I think, probably, again, like with most companies, it's an issue of visibility and transparency. So, I wouldn't ask Fred now because it's not quite the end of the quarter, but, as soon as earnings come out or revenue numbers, or, I think that we could have something that makes a lot of sense here.
So how's the stock trading?
The stock actually trades okay. So far today, it's traded 200,000 so far. It's trading right around a penny. The high back in December, January was about 6 cents. So, if it'll break out here above about a penny and a half, we can have an easy double to 3 or maybe even 4 cents. And I think, once the company starts to really produce revenues even without earnings, we could have a pretty interesting deal. I mean, you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you're talking about a company that has a market cap of $7 million. So, if they were to get 1/10 of 1%, the stock would triple.
Wow.
Boy, Fred,
Big upside.
Yeah, you were really onto something. iMedicor, and what's the stock symbol?
Just so that you know, is V as in Victor, M as in Mary, C as in Charles, I as in Ida.
Boy, that's
VMCI.
Okay. Hey, Fred, good luck in D.C., and hopefully you can find some folks that really understand what you're talking about. You've got an amazing concept. This sounds like this could really work. Good luck to you.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today.
All right, and this is not only going to be on Ustream, but it will also be on YouTube a little bit later today for folks wanting to know.
You'll be able to go to PrincetonResearch.com to.
It will be on PrincetonResearch.com as well, so it's going to be all over the place for folks interested in iMedicor.
Thanks again, Fred.
Thank you.
Charles, Michael, thank you, Fred. Thank you. Good luck in Washington, D.C. You've been listening to Money Info. Fascinating show today. iMedicor, look it up. VMCI, stock symbol. This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie.